Jalen Hurts is having a career year, but is he the MVP? I'll give my take and also address comments made this week by Micah, Parsons, and Chris Sims. Also, I'll preview the Birds' upcoming game against the Bears and explain why this game might be tougher than people think. This episode of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel starts right now. What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. I am your host, Jordan Hirsch. And now, guys, before we get into this video, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. Make sure you guys are also following me on Instagram. The link will be down in the description below. So as the NFL season begins to wind down, the question right now is who will win the offensive MVP? Will it be Jalen Hurts? Will it be Patrick Mahomes or somebody else? Of course, if you ask pretty much anyone around this city, they're going to tell you it's going to be Jalen Hurts. But if you look kind of on the national level, not so much maybe. So let's kind of take a look at if these Eagles fans all saying Hurts is the MVP, which I'm one of them, of course. Let's see if that's rooted in the logic and the facts, or if that's just us being fans of the Eagles. So if you take a look at the stats between the top two guys, I think it's most likely going to come down to either Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes winning the MVP. Right now, Jalen Hurts is minus 165 to win it, so he is the favorite. Patrick Mahomes is second favorite at plus 175, followed by Joe Burrow, who's at plus 750. So it really is a two-man race right now. But if you take a look at their stats this season, Jalen Hurts with 3,157 passing yards, a 68% completion percentage, 22 touchdowns through the air to just 3 interceptions, just 3 picks. I think that is huge, considering the fact that turnover margin is always, at least a good turnover margin, is always a quality of a good team. He's first in QBR at 108.4. Oh, and then if you take a look at on the ground, 686 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. That combines for 3,843 total yards, 32 total touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. Obviously, excellent numbers there for Jalen Hurts, who's having a great year. But Patrick Mahomes is also having a great year. If you take a look at his stats, he's got 4,160 yards through the air, a 65.8% completion percentage. Of course, Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense does use the air attack more than the Eagles do. 33 touchdowns for Mahomes, 11 picks though, so the turnover problems have been there for the Chiefs and Mahomes. He's got a 103.4 QBR, 280 yards on the ground, just two TDs there. So that's a combined total of 4,440 yards and 35 touchdowns and 11 picks. So if you take a look at those numbers, they're pretty even there. In fact, I'd almost give a slight edge to Mahomes, at least in terms of just overall numbers. However, this is not the best player. I've always said that the MVP should not just be the best player in the league. It should be the most valuable player, especially in the NFL, where you also have offensive and defensive players of the year. That, I think, should be for the best player on both sides of the football. But the MVP is who is most valuable to the team. And that's where I give Jalen Hurts the edge, and where I really take a little bit of offense here with what Chris Sims had to say earlier this week. Chris Sims, talking on CBS earlier this week, said, quote, "There's just no way meaning Jalen Hurts, and there's just no way Jalen Hurts is more valuable than Mahomes, Allen, or Burrow. No way. If Minshew is in, the Eagles are still damn good. I'm sorry." Of course, the Eagles would still obviously be really good if Gardner Minshew was in. But what I really have the problem with is that he's basically saying that Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow are all more valuable to their team than Jalen Hurts is. And to that I have to say, well, the entire Eagles offense is constructed around this guy, constructed around Hurts. I mean, the main facet of their offense is the RPO. Eagles have run that all season. They run it a lot, and they run it to perfection most of the times. And you cannot do that if you do not have a quarterback like Hurts, a guy who's mobile, who again has almost 700 yards on the ground. He very well could have 1,000 yards rushing this year. He's already got 10 rushing TDs. I mean, if you take a look at some of those other names, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, you could not, and Minshew especially. You talked about Minshew saying the Eagles would still be really good if Minshew was a quarterback. Of course they would, but their main facet of the offense, that RPO, they would not be able to run as effectively, at least, as they do with Hurts. Hurts' legs have been just absolutely lethal this season. I mean, we saw him take a look at that Dallas game earlier in the year. Micah Parsons, who I'm going to get into a little bit later, had the worst game of his career in that game. Micah Parsons, arguably the best defender in football. I mean, he was put on skates the entire night because of Jalen Hurts, and he looked lost out there. And it's not just Micah Parsons who the Eagles have done this to. Every week, the Eagles run the RPO, and every week they run it to perfection. It's almost a little bit of a triple option the way they run it, because you could either, of course, hand it off to Miles Sanders, Hurts could keep it, or Hurts could throw it to one of the better wide receiver cores in the game. So I think what Chris Sims is saying just is not rooted in the facts at all. I think Jalen Hurts is more valuable to his team than Mahomes is, or Allen is, or Joe Burrow is, just because the entire Eagles offense is run through Jalen Hurts, and the main facet of their offense you could not do if you do not have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts. That's where I really think that Jalen Hurts proves that he is the most valuable player in the league, best offensive player in the league. That may be up for a little bit of debate between him and Mahomes, but I don't think that there's much of an argument, really, when it comes to Jalen Hurts being the most valuable player in the league. Of course, Chris Sims was not the only person to kind of take a shot at Jalen Hurts and give his take on whether or not Jalen Hurts is the MVP. Dallas Cowboys linebacker Micah Parsons went on Von Miller's podcast earlier in the week. He was asked his thoughts on whether or not Jalen Hurts should be the MVP, to which he responded, quote, "Is it Hurts or the team?" And the host Von Miller responded back saying, quote, "I think it's a little bit of both." And I completely agree with Von Miller here. Of course it's a little bit of both, because the Eagles are all around Jalen Hurts. This Eagles team is the best in the league at almost everything that they've got going on. I mean, it's the best defensive line in the league. They lead the league in sacks. It's definitely the best cornerback duo in the league with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. It's the best offensive line in the league. You've got one of the best wide receiver cores in the league. But I don't really think that can't take away from just what Jalen Hurts is doing and what makes him extremely. It can't take away from how valuable he is to this team as well, considering the fact that football is a very complementary game. I think it's the most complementary game in all of sports, just where everything is kind of connected. Because offensive line, of course, no doubt they're the best in the league, but Jalen Hurts is making them look even better just because of the reads that he is making. I mean, if he's getting the ball out like that, he's getting the ball out really quick. He's finding the right guys. He's finding Smith. He's finding Devontae Smith. He's finding A.J. Brown, Quez Watkins, and all of them. He's finding Dallas Goedert when they're open. And of course, the defense. Of course, the defense is valuable to this team. But considering the fact that Jalen Hurts is going for the offensive MVP, I'm not really sure how much you could factor the defense in to that argument. Of course, they're really good. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts is just, he makes everybody around him better. He makes the wide receivers better. Of course, you've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with any quarterback are going to ball out just because of how good they are. But Jalen Hurts makes them that much better. Same thing with the offensive line. Any quarterback, this offensive line is going to be really good, but Jalen Hurts makes them that much better. I mean, Jalen Hurts on and off the field, I think, is making this entire team better. He's valuable. He's certainly the most valuable player on the field when it comes to the NFL, and I think he's certainly he might be the most valuable player off the field as well. Just his leadership style, the way he goes about his business, the way he works on his craft, just so meticulous and so well. I think there's no denying that Jalen Hurts is the most valuable player of this league. And also, as a part of the question that Micah Parsons was asked, it was really about just the whole scheme of the Eagles as well, and that's kind of where that whole "is it Hurts or the team" thing kind of comes from, the scheme of the Eagles. And this goes back to football being a complementary game, and also kind of back to what Chris Sims said as well, where the Eagles, the way they run their offense with the RPO, and are able to get guys open off of that, and Jalen Hurts' running ability as well. I mean, you cannot run the scheme that the Eagles run. You cannot run the offense that the Eagles run without a guy like Jalen Hurts, because of everything that I said when I was talking about Chris Sims, just how explosive he is, how the great reads that he makes, and just how dynamic of a player Hurts is. And that is what makes him very valuable to this team, is the fact that they can really just build their offense, run it through him, and run this offense so effectively. It's a top scoring offense in the league, averaging almost 30 points per game. And I think you can't question that how Jalen Hurts is at the center of all of this, and how he's run all of this, and just how valuable he is to this team. All right. So now let's get into the Eagles game this week. Let's focus a little bit more on the present now, as the Eagles are traveling to Chicago for tomorrow's game against the 3-10 Bears. Eagles are 8.5-point favorites according to Vegas. So this should be an easy Eagles win. However, I do think that there is a little bit of fear about this one being a trap game. Of course, you've got Dallas next week. And theoretically, if everything goes right, the Eagles could lock up the 1 seed, they could lock up the division, they could lock up everything next week in Dallas on Christmas Eve on national TV, and make the last 2 weeks essentially meaningless. And I'm sure the Eagles would love to do that. However, they have to stay focused on the Bears this week, because this Chicago team, although they are 3-10, can be dangerous. Justin Fields, if you take a look at his stats, he's having a really good year considering at least the situation that he is in. Fields has a 905 rushing yards. He does a lot of damage with his legs. 8 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging a little over 7 yards per rushing attempt. He's got thrown. The passing game has been a little bit more off for him. 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a 62% completion percentage. So Justin Fields much improved this year. He's having a great season. And I think that he makes this game very dangerous, especially considering the fact the Eagles' run defense has had its struggles at times this year, and containing Justin Fields is going to be a major factor in this game. You've got to make Justin Fields throw the ball. You've got to make him a passer, considering the fact that the Bears' passing attack is the worst in the league. They average just 141 yards through the air per game. They're also going to be without their top receiver in Darnell Mooney, and no Chase Claypool in this game, as well, as he is out with a knee injury. So making Justin Fields a passer is going to be key in this game, and making sure the Eagles do not fall for that trap game. I really do not see that happening. I just think the way this team is led, leaders that they've got, Jalen Hurts, of course, Jason Kelce, everybody else, I think this team is just run too well to fall for this trap game. It certainly could be the biggest scare. It's kind of the biggest scary game of the year to this point, I think, just because of the fact you just are hoping that they do not overlook it and look on to the game against Dallas next week. But again, I really don't see that happening. I think this team is run too well to allow that to happen. I also think the Eagles are going to be able to exploit Chicago, just because of how much better they are in almost every facet of the game than the Bears. I mean, if you take a look at the Bears' rush defense, they're 27th in the league. They give up about 100. They give up 146 yards per game. Eagles have the second best rushing offense in the league. They run for about 162 yards per game. So I really think that just as much as Justin Fields' legs are going to be a factor, I think Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders' legs are going to be just as big of a factor in this game. Kind of want to talk about Miles Sanders a little bit here too. He eclipsed the 1,000 yard mark. He's the first Eagle with 1,000 yards in a season for running back since LaShawn McCoy back in 2014. He's also the first Eagles running back with 1,000 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns since Shady did it in 2011. I think he's going to have another monster game in this one against the Bears. I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a monster game with his legs, and I really think that's going to be able to open up the passing game as well. Hurts should have a lot of time in this game. Bears have just 16 sacks on the season. I believe they just have 1 sack in their last 6 games. So the defensive line there has certainly been struggling, and if Jalen Hurts has all that time, you allow A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they're going to find their way open, and if not, Hurts will take off with his legs and really just exploit the poorest rushing defense of Chicago. So just as much as I do think that this could end up being a trap game for the Eagles, I think just as much, even more, that they're going to be able to avoid that, and that they're just too talented, I think, for this Bears team. I don't think this is going to be a complete blowout. However, I do think the Eagles put up some more monster point numbers. I think they get a win. I think it's going to be 38 for the Eagles, 21 for the Bears. I have the Eagles winning this game 38-21. Also, finally, I want to touch on some injuries on the Eagles side. It was announced earlier today that Dallas Goedert will not return for this game. He will remain on IR. With that shoulder injury. The 21-day practice window was open for him earlier this week, so I think all signs are pointing to him returning next week, Christmas Eve, on Saturday, against the Dallas Cowboys, of course, punter Aaron Sipos was put on injured reserve, so he's going to miss a considerable amount of time. Eagles picked up former Pro Bowl punter Brett Kern, a 3-time Pro Bowler, last punted with the Titans last year. So, of course, just another former Pro Bowler that Howie Roseman adds to this team, and this time at punter. Eagles also have a reunion with safety Anthony Harris, who was on the team last year and earlier this season during the preseason. That is because Reed Blankenship suffered that injury, that knee injury, during the game against New York last week. So we're going to see some Kayvon Wallace in this game against the Bears. We're also going to see some Anthony Harris, I would assume, as well, considering the fact that it should not take him that long to get adjusted back into this offense, considering the fact he was here last year and also in the preseason for this year as well. Alright, that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. Again, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. I typically post every Saturday, however, because the Eagles play next Saturday against Cowboys on Christmas Eve, my next video is going to be out next Monday. I'm going to do a recap of that Eagles-Cowboys game and also go over all the other stuff that goes on in Philly sports over this next week. So again, make sure you guys are also following me on Instagram. The link's going to be down in the description below, or you can just look me up. It's at Philly Sports Spot. That's PhillyssportSpot. So just one S between sport and spot. And until next time, guys, let's go Birds. Let's get a win tomorrow against the Bears.